Hello. Um, it is the summertime. It is July 23rd. Um, and I'm so bored. I'm so bored. Um, I'm like barely scheduled for my summer part-time job. And that's fine because I mean, I don't like working, but I do also like money, but it's also like something to do. But I'm not scheduled that much, so I have a lot of free time, and my friends are all wonderful, hardworking individuals, and they are all quite busy all the time. Especially you, Georgia, in Costa Rica. How dare you? Leaving me alone. And then she's going back to Chicago, like, when she gets back here, so we're gonna have, like, 4 days. Okay, that's not important, that's just me having a personal grudge. But yeah, I'm super bored, and also I'm sorry that the camera does that. You are propped up on a shoebox, a scrapbook, a horror anthology, and then two other books. So I'm on my bed right now. Welcome to my childhood bedroom. You will not be getting a tour because it's not worth it, but this is where I reside. It's noon on a Tuesday, and I am just so bored, and I want to talk about books, because books is good for the brain. Books is something, Jesus Christ. Books are something that I enjoy filling my time with, so I've been reading a lot, and because I'm in my childhood bedroom, I have a bunch of books from all over the years accumulated here. So I figured I would walk you through some of them, like my favorites. I say some of them. There are minimum 10 books going on just right here, and then there are more off to the side from when I was propping my phone up the first time that I was trying to do this, and it was a miserable failure. So let's get into it. What should we start with? This is the book that I was talking about when my first recording started dying. This is Paradise Rot by Jenny Val. She is a Norwegian musician, and this is her first book to be published in English. So, we English speakers, thank you for publishing this. This is about a foreign exchange student. She's studying abroad in a European country that I was trying to subtly look up when I did this the first time, and then I kind of didn't figure out what it was. I know that in the book the character is also Norwegian, but she's in maybe Prague. She's somewhere. But hold on. I swear it's gonna say it somewhere. Whatever. This is about a foreign exchange student, and she is studying abroad, and it's very abstract and weird. She's a science student, and she moves in with this other lady who lives in like a big old abandoned factory, and they have a very strange relationship, and the factory is super weird, and it's all very like gross, and but not in like an outwardly gross way. It's just the way that like things happen is very organic, if like for lack of better word. And she and that lady sure have a relationship. It's like one of the things where it's like you're reading this and you're like, what's happening? But like deep down your like gay monkey brain is like, oh, they're absolutely gonna hook up, or like at least they have some like really weird untapped potential. It's a beautiful book. It's very short. Look at this. You can read that. It's what, 100 something pages? 145-ish pages. There's poetry in it. There's a man, unfortunately. And it's just, I really like this book. It's a weird little book. And speaking of weird little books, we have plenty of these coming up. This is Dogs of Summer by Andrea Abreu. I know that all of this is backwards. Maybe when I look at the final recording, it won't be backwards, but anyways, Dogs of Summer. This is about two girls growing up in the Canary Islands, and they're about 10, 11-ish, like just breaching the double digits. And the main character's name is Shit, because that's what she's referred to by her best friend Isadora. And they also have a very complex relationship. This is a wonderful, wonderful perspective from like a little girl, because it's very, like I said earlier, it's very gross, but not in the way that's like trying to provoke you. It's just like it's written in the way that we all talk before we have that like societal filter of like what you really shouldn't be saying because it's kind of crass and kind of nasty. She picks up on all of like the little dramas of their neighborhood and just like says it. Like when a little kid comes up to you and says something like super personal about their parents, and you're like, oh my god, your mom would be so sad if she knew that you were telling me about like her boyfriend. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's very raw, and it has all of these like wonderful rambling chapters that's just like the narrator's stream of consciousness. And it's also a great like portrait of like queer girlhood, I would say, because I feel like the relationships, like the friendships that little girls have are very intense. Like it's love, 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 but also like so much like the growing kind of competition as you get older, where it's like who's developing faster, like who is smarter, who is like the boys paying attention to, like whose family loves them more, who like there's just a love buried deep in these competitions. But there's also like when you're a queer young girl, it's like that competition, but also that like further untangling of like, do I love you? Do I hate you? Do I want to be you? Do I want to be with you? Do I want to kiss you? She has all of these wonderful like long segments where she's talking, and it just there is so much entwinement between the narrator and Isadora, where it's like they just all she wants to always be touching, always be in like close contact. Like I think if she had it her way, they would just be sewn together. And I think that's really like that really spoke to me in a certain kind of way, where it's like I don't think I've ever had a young friendship the way that like Shit and Isadora do, but I've had ones that are reminiscent of it, and I thought that was really neat to see written down, especially like from such a young character. What other weird little things do I have going on? This is Waif by Samantha Kolesnik. I love this book. I'm never reading this again. It really messed me up the first time I read it. The main character, her name is Angela. She is married to this guy, and she is just like not super satisfied in her relationship, even though he's like very successful. They have a very nice house. She has all these nice things. But she goes to the grocery store and she sees this guy, and she is just like overwhelmed by how attracted she is to this man. And it was really weird reading this book because the way that they describe this guy she sees at the grocery store was like tit for tat my celebrity crush at the time, who was a man. Ew. And then I was just like, oh, because then you start reading the book a little bit more and you're like, oh, she's like definitely gay. And I was just reading this like, haha, okay, that's fine. And then it just gets into like the plastic surgery, and it's another gross book. Do I like gross books? I think I'm picking up a anyways, also like porn. There's talk of porn in here. Girl gangs. It just all goes so fast. It's just down, and it's a wonderful, wonderful book that I hope I never ever read again. So it really, really messed me up. But speaking of books that I would read again, because I am rereading it, Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I am currently rereading this for the, I don't know, 1 millionth time since I stole this from Georgia's house last summer. Sorry, Georgia, this is what you get for going to Costa Rica. I'm gonna steal your book. This is a classic. I think it came out in like the 90s, but I'm a 2000s baby. That's not important. I don't know what I'm saying. It's narrated by these boys who have now grown into men who were the peers and had crushes on these 5 sisters, the Lisbon sisters, in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, who all killed themselves within the span of 13 months. It was the youngest sister killed herself, and then the family just goes into like rapid decline, and then the remaining sisters also killed themselves. And it's just such a weird book. It's a really good book. It's just like all of the critiques of it are quite valid in that like the boys talking about these girls, they make such a mythos out of these children, and like how mysterious they were and how like otherworldly beautiful and like strange but like untouchable sort of angels. And it is super weird that they're still harping on that when they're like adults with families. They literally say there's something in here. The camera's shaking. I'm getting passionate. They say something in here about how like even in their adult lives, I think like particularly when they're talking about something sexual, it's like they're still sort of reaching for these girls and like the feelings that they gave them when they were growing up. And that's super creepy and weird. That's very strange to think that. And then also like they touch on this a couple times, how it's like they weren't close with these girls at all, but they do eventually end up going to a school dance with them, and they talk about interacting with them and how strange and foreign it was, and how like up close they lost all of this like angelic glow around them, and they were very real, and they were a little plain, and they were a little strange. And they had like, they talk about how all of them have like extra sets of canines, and their dresses were a little rumpled, and the oldest sister has like fuzz on her face, she has like a mustache, and they just like were baffled that they weren't like as perfect as they were, but they still talk about them like they are. It's just it's a really weird book in terms of narration, because like brother, you know, but it's so good. Like it's still so good. And I think that like there's a reason that it's such a hit with all of the like hashtag coquette core femcel Tumblr girlies, because like the way that they talk about how these girls were like cut off from the world, like from their depression and like the neglect of their parents, and like neglect through just like actual neglect, and also from just like cutting them off from the world and being bad parents and not knowing how to handle like the aftermath of their first daughter's suicide and how that impacted the rest of them. It does kind of strike a chord. And I mean, like, it absolutely struck a chord with me, that like, for a myriad of reasons that I won't get into, but it's like I read this book and I read about these girls, and like if you can peer through like the gauze of the lies, not like outward lies, but like the mystery that these boys spin around them that just like isn't real, because they're people and not like little fairies in their minds. It's just like it really does kind of hit you right here. And it's especially just because it's like such a like a sleepy sad little Midwestern book, and I'm a sleepy sad Midwestern girl. I love this book. It's a good book. I don't think I'm gonna give it back to Georgia. I'll just buy her a new copy because I want that one. Speaking of Jesus Christ, speaking of books that I really like that I don't have with me right now, my favorite book ever is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and I bought this mug because the main character, Eleanor, talks about insisting upon your cup of stars when she sees a little girl throwing a fit in a cafe because she wants her cup of stars that she has at home to drink milk. And I resonate a lot with that character. It's a wonderful book. It's one of the like OG gothic haunted house stories, if not the first. And it's perfect. It's a perfect book and I love it. Go read The Haunting of Hill House. The show is also really good. I'm mentally ill, so I have a tattoo about it. Maybe if I do any other kind of video, I'll do a little tattoo tour for you. Anyways, speaking of old horror books, The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. It says true story. Girl, this is not a true story. Maybe in some capacity. I think this is like a Conjuring sort of situation where it's like, I think there were elements that were real and elements that were like super definitely not real. I like this book. It is such a fun read. It is so much fun because it's like, it takes place over, 28 days from a family moving into this house where a guy killed himself and his family. And it's like super haunted and like very poltergeisty, where it's like built on an Indian burial ground and all of the shit that comes from that. But like all of the sentences where it's like, and then the gargoyle turned around, it all ends with like an exclamation point, and so I'm just like, how scary, ooh, oh no. It's just like, you really can't take it that seriously, even though it's just like the decline of a family and the description of like a demonic haunting, which I love. I love spooky shit like that. But it's just, I cannot take it seriously. It's so much fun. I love this book. It smells like mothballs. She is my world. She is my world. I love this book. What else do we have? Another family sort of book. This is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I got this at a Boomerangs for like $2 when I was 12 or 13. This shit changed my life. This is such a good book. It's about a guy named Jason. Jason, if you would have told me a year ago, sorry. It's about a guy named Jason who was a scientist, and he was a very well-renowned scientist. He did a lot of good work, but he gave it up ultimately to continue building his family with his wife Daniela and his son Charlie? ? But he became a family man over a scientist, and then he gets kidnapped by an alternate universe version of himself who chose science over his family, because that version of him was like, actually fuck this, I wish I had done the family man thing, because the woman who became his wife in like the first reality, he misses her and he wants her, and so he switches places with himself, and it's just like him trying to get back to his family, and it just raises all these questions of like, it's like this is like the Butterfly Effect, the movie. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just like one little change like really did change his life forever, and then he goes and sees all of these other alternate realities where he had done like slightly different things, or like the world around him changed in a certain way and like how it impacted his life and like his livelihood and blah 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 blah. And it is just so fascinating, and it's like, I would say it's it's a science-y book because it's like talking about, like all of the alternate realities and stuff. I think this is a book about love. Frankly, this is a family book. This is a book about the heart, because like what it comes down to is like him in all of these realities always goes back to his wife, always goes back to that son, to the family, to the core of who we are as people, as humans who crave connection and love and affection. Because it's like in that alternate reality, he wins like, I want to say a Nobel Prize for the stuff that he does, but it doesn't matter. Like, he's so lonely. And it's like, we as people, like, we kind of only have each other. And it's like that love that we want and we crave, and like some of us are lucky enough to get, Like, that's the shit we should be holding on to, other than, like, working ourselves to death. That's what the capitalist machine doesn't want you to know. What should we do next? Let's do a little curveball. We're gonna go back to the weird little books. This is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I love this book. This book is so, me saying weird for the 1000th time. This book is so weird, but it's so good. It's about, this Korean woman in Korea, who decides to stop eating meat. And then everything goes to shit in her life because she has these dreams about meat that really gross her out, that are really dark and scary, that we only really get like a little glimpse of. And she decides to stop eating meat, and her husband is terrible, 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 and he like tries to force her to do it. Like, she won't cook meat for him, so he like goes into a rage. And then like with her family, it's like her dad is like horrified that she's not eating meat anymore and like tries to force her to eat meat, which like ends up in her harming herself. And then she's taken advantage of by her sister's husband, who has this like psychosexual like attraction to her, like, for lack of a better word. It is attraction, but it's like also like definitely something else because he's a weirdo. But it's just like there's something like so under the surface in this, like in the narratives, because like the first part is from the perspective of her husband, the second part is from the perspective of her sister's husband, and then the third part is the perspective of her sister when she's like really declining. So it's like you have a main character and you never hear from her directly, and it's just her in this world not choosing, like shying away from the expectations and like the things that are like that she's supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to eat meat, but she doesn't. And it's like, that is a choice, that is free will, but it's like everyone around her treats her like it's fucking crazy that she's not doing that. And it's just like about the patriarchy and the expectations of women, and how like we can't win, really. Like, even when we take matters into our own hands and choose what we want, like society doesn't want to help you with that. But, and it's like, in the end, like, all she really has is her sister. And it's just, ugh, I love this book. It's so good. Again, really short read. I read this book. It's so good. It's, this author, I think, has other books, but I don't know if this is her only one that's in English. But, because she's a Korean author. But this is so good. This is so good. Please read this book. Let's do something a little more lighthearted, kind of. This is a summer read for the ages. Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alir Sands. This is a good book. Guys, go read this book. I can't even get into how good this book is. It's about these two teenage boys who meet at a swimming pool and during the summer, and they become friends and a little more, but they don't get into that until like the latter regions of the book. I'm starting to fizzle out, I fear. But it's just so beautiful, and it's this like connection between these two boys who like have so much in common but also are so different, and it's like, but that doesn't matter. And it's like, it's also kind of going back to like Dogs of Summer in a way, where it's like the queer like childhood friendship, even though these boys are, I want to say like 15, 16, 17 maybe by the end of the book. Like they're deep in their teens, but it's just that like that connection that you form with someone that you love so deeply and also like have feelings for, where it's like you feel that kind of competition, because the main character is Aristotle. He goes by Ari. He's just always talking about Dante, who he meets, who is the other character, and how like his family life is so much more stable, and like he has lighter skin than him, and he's more put together and all of that. And it's just this sort of like, it really walks the line between like admiration and worship and like sort of hatred, and it's just so complicated and it's so beautiful. And this is one of few books where at the end of it made me cry. It takes a little bit for me to cry from a book. I'm a water sign, so like everything makes me cry, but not so much at books, even though like a lot of the books that I love are like very deeply emotional. But like this, I burst into tears in one of the end scenes. And I will say, for people who consume queer media and immediately are like, holy shit, everybody's gonna die, it's a happy ending. It's a wonderful book. Please read this. I think this book like should be taught in schools. It's so good. Okay, speaking of books that make me cry, The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This is a masterpiece. This is a modern masterpiece. Sort of like in the same way that like The Virgin Suicides is like a modern classic. This is it. This is my favorite freaking book. Like, I've said that about like 14 different books at this point. I love this book. It's, as the back says, it's a bit of a read. It's set in 1939 in Nazi Germany, and the main character's adoptive family at one point is hiding a Jewish man in their basement, and the tensions are very high because they like have to do like the I'm getting ahead of myself. The main character, her name is Liesel. Her brother dies and she is sent off to live with this other family in Germany. She was in Germany in the first place. I don't know why I'm clarifying that. And she's a little book thief. She steals books, and then her adoptive father, who she loves and is very supportive of her, like teaches her how to read. She's a child, she's younger. I would say she's like 12 or 13, I think. She's a tween. And, you know, she has to, like, go to the Hitler youth meetings, and her parents have to, like, be involved in the Nazi party, but they don't believe in it at all. Hence why they end up hiding Max in their basement, who connects with Liesel through art and just, like, trying to understand each other, even though, like, they come from such different backgrounds, but they're also so similar. And what I love, above all else about this book, is it is narrated by Death. Death himself is the narrator. And it is so, like, I'm thinking about it and I'm, like, tearing up. This is the book that makes me cry the most. It is so beautiful. It has all of these, like, little interludes by Death, like, little asides, sort of a speaking to the camera. And Max's art is in this. Like, there are these pages where it's, like, the art and the writings that he shows Liesel. And it's just so beautiful. And unlike Ari and Dante, this has a very sad ending, but it's sort of hopeful in a way. It's just like, obviously it's a book about, you know, the perseverance and the goodness of human spirit in Nazi Germany, so obviously it is not going to end well for those people. Sorry, I had hair in my face. I'm trying to find, yeah, there's a lot of, like, bird imagery from Max. Sorry. He talks a lot about, like, boxing and boxing the Führer. Read this book. Please just read this book. It's so good. Me begging with you all with every single one. Please read this book. This is just what's closest to me. This is Turning Point. This is a collection of interviews by Hayao Miyazaki, who is the brains behind Studio Ghibli, fucking Totoro, Ponyo. This is just a really good, like, compilation, the Ticketmaster envelope, of, like, it's chronological, so it goes from, like, his first films, interviews he did with that, and then, like, further on, like, the first section is about Princess Mononoke, which is my favorite Ghibli movie. I think it's beautiful, and it's just, like, you really get, a look into the guy who creates all of these incredibly beautiful, poignant movies, and you can, like, really see the heart of this guy and, like, what he believes in and how that's reflected in everything he makes. And that's why all of his stuff is so thoughtful and, you know, persistent, like, even all these years after they were made. This is just, like, this is another, like, kind of summer read for me. I'm saying that about a lot of these books as well, because it's summer, it's July. But it's just really nice to like go through and read his thoughts. There's like he gets questioned by like interviewers a lot, and then it has some art in it too. I love art in a book. This is a good book. I'm winding down. This is sort of a special mention. This is a McSweeney's unpublished, unknown, and unbelievable. They're a publishing company, and it has all of these 12 new writers, like their first short story publications, and then a bunch of short stories that were written in 20 minutes or less. And I got this for my 12th birthday from my father because it's the 12th edition. And there is just one story in here that has really, really impacted me for such a long time, and I kind of can't explain why. This is from House on the Rock. I went there last week. About this guy named Bruno, and he meets this woman named Margot, and they steal a squid from the Natural History Museum, and it's also like the apocalypse and the end of the world, and they have this like weird survival sexual sort of relationship, but like also kind of with the squid. It's really weird, and it's just like, I think about this story all the time. It's called After the Disaster by Ben Ehrenreich. Ehrenreich? And I don't think you can read it anywhere else, but this whole book is jam-packed of wonderful, wonderful stories. There's another... What is the other one? The Neutered Bulldog is another really, really good story in this collection. That, of course, I love because it's another depiction, let's say it all together, class, queer girlhood. The Neutered Bulldog by Rachel Sherman, about this girl who is, like, in love with her poetry teacher, and her poetry teacher is, like, high-key a pedophile, and is, like, sleeping with one of her other classmates, but, like, she wishes it was her that she was sleeping with, and it's like about poetry and stuff. But anyway, After the Disaster is just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like so bleak and, again, gross, and I love it. It's such a good story. I'm literally gonna read this after I'm done with this. We're winding down. We're getting there. I'm leaving the best for last. Another piece of queer girlhood, childhood, I would say. This is classic. This is Fun Home. This is a family tragicomic. It is a graphic novel memoir of Alison Bechdel, who is a very iconic queer artist. She did Dykes to Watch Out For, and she is the originator of the Bechdel test. It's just so beautiful. It's about her own queer childhood and the reckoning of her dad's queer identity after he died. Pretty young. I would say he died pretty young. She was like 20 something and he was like 40 something. But it is just so, like, I just love her art. It's just the style of it, and she writes so beautifully. She has such a clear voice. She has such like a deep understanding of who she is, and is like trying to employ that in understanding her parents. She also, like, there's a lot of talk about her mom too, and she has a second book that's about her mom rather than her dad. And again, I found a lot that I really identify with in that book that I think a lot of young queer women do, but also specifically me, because she talks a lot about her like understanding of, like, now that as an adult, her now understanding of what was her obsessive compulsive disorder and her autism. And I I feel a lot of stuff about that, and I should really talk to a doctor, and I'm not going to, but amazing, amazing book. We're doing another coffee interlude. I wonder if you'll be able to hear the cicadas, because I can hear the cicadas, but I don't know how good my phone's audio is. So, okay, this is just an actual classic. This is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I am so embarrassed I didn't read this earlier. I read this for a class that I just took when I was abroad in Ireland that was about speculative fiction. And I would absolutely say this counts as speculative fiction. Apparently, a lot of people don't think that. It's literally a ghost story. I think it's just because it has so many, like, historical elements to it. But this is brilliant. The main character's name is Seth. She is an escaped slave, and she is now living in Denver with her daughter, Denver. And it's like she got away from all of that, but also she never really had any time to, like, process what happened to her when she was enslaved, and also when her daughter died by her own hands. And then her daughter kind of comes back because she died when she was a baby, and so their house was like a haunted house by this baby spirit. And then someone comes into her life and pushes the ghost out, but then the ghost comes back as a physical manifestation as this woman beloved who is the age that her daughter would have been had she survived. And it is just so, like, I'm like tearing up talking about this book because it is so I highlighted the hell out of it. We didn't have to finish this, like, we didn't have to read this for our class. It was like you had to do your final exam on like a bunch of different books that we read. There are some that I considered putting in this video, but this was like by far my favorite. And it's just, I ended up writing my exam on this book because I could not get it out of my head. It is just like the impact of trauma, especially on Black women, and then also just like motherhood and daughterhood itself just across the board, and like that like reckoning with like things that you have done and things that have been done to you, and like how important it is to address certain things, and recovering of memories and family. It is just so rich, and it is so deserving of all of the praise it has ever gotten. I love this book. I'm so happy that I read that book for that class. And again, absolutely humiliated I did not read it earlier, because if I had read that when I was in like middle school or high school or something, I would have never shut up about it. Like, I love a ghost story, and I love a story about like the complexities of family, especially like through mothers and daughters, and how that looks in different like cultures and perspectives. And it's so good. We're on our last book, but our last book is 3 books, because this is the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. These are my favorite books ever. And once again, I have said that so many times throughout this thing. Like, but the thing is, all of it is true. Like, The Haunting of Hill House is my favorite book. Fucking Book Thief is my favorite book. Annihilation, which is the first book in this series, is my favorite book. I think all of that can exist at the same time. Folks, I think we can have multiple favorite books. But it is just, I don't even know how or where to begin with the Southern Reach trilogy, because it is just like, this is brilliant. The first book, Annihilation, was made into a movie by Alex Garland in like the late 2010s, and it's ass. It's a bad movie, like in accordance with the book, bad, very bad adaptation. And I know a lot of people really liked Annihilation, and I think there was like good parts. Like, obviously I'm not gonna knock on fucking Natalie Portman, like, holy shit, but they just so defeated the purpose of like who the biologist is, who is the main character, and like who she, like that character overall, and like the significance of like not naming the characters. Because, okay, here's the thing. So Annihilation, the book, is written from the perspective of the biologist, and she is on an expedition into Area X, which is an environmental anomaly that came down on the coast of Florida. They never say it's Florida, but like it super definitely is Florida. Came down on the coast of Florida, and the Southern Reach is this government agency that has been tasked with collecting information on Area X and keeping it contained, because it has expanded since the first time that it like dropped on the earth. And initially it was just like a town, and then it's just been slowly encroaching more along the coast and into Florida. But they're tasked with collecting data on that, so they send expeditions into Area X to come back and like with their findings. And in all of these expeditions, they have team members that have different specialties. Like on the biologist expedition, it is her. She's a biologist. A psychologist. She's the leader. A surveyor, and an anthropologist. They were also going to have a linguist, but she dropped out. So it's like stuff like that. And what makes the biologist's relationship special with Area X is that her husband was on the expedition before her, and that's what motivated her to do this expedition. He was a medic, ? I think he was a medic, and went on that expedition, and then he came back, and he was different, and he died, and it was just super weird. And she was like, I have got to get to the bottom of this shit, just like from the own like motivation that she pulls from within herself as like a weird autistic lady who's like, I gotta go look at some fucking tide pools in this weird place and figure out what's going on. Because she and her husband had a very like special relationship, because she talks a lot about how like she's just so much more interested in the natural world than people. But she did love her husband. It was just like in a different kind of way, I would say. Anyways, they go into Area X. Everything just falls apart so fast. But it's so interesting because you're like hearing about this completely foreign ecosystem, extraterrestrial ecosystem, ? And she is like, she's uncovering so much. Sorry, I'm sweating. I'm talking about this. I'm getting excited because it's the best. And it's just like the relationships that she has with the people on this expedition. And it is so important to the plot that none of them have names, that they are just defined by the role that they serve on this expedition. And that's something I'm really mad about in the movie, is that it gave them names, and I was like, congrats, you lost the plot, you missed the point. But, and then it's a trilogy, so it's like, it's her expedition, and then after that, it's getting more into, like, the Southern Reach itself, like, the government agency, as seen by the new, like, acting director who goes in to try and, like, figure out what is going on in the Southern Reach. I love him. His name is Control Rodriguez, and he is so lame, and I like him so much. He's, like, the ultimate cringe-filled Nepo baby, where it's like, he's, like, thinks he's James Bond, like, infiltrating this thing and, like, collecting secrets and bringing it back to his mom. And he's just, like, everyone around him is like, oh boy, this guy does not know what's happening. And then the third book is about, Area X before it was Area X, really, like, that first town that I said initially that I, like, dropped on. The lighthouse keeper that lived in that town, because a big part of Annihilation is, like, a lot of stuff takes place in a lighthouse, and it's about the guy who looked over the lighthouse, and also a character that I can't tell you who it is, but is introduced in the first book, and then you figure out it's her in the second book, and then in the third book you get to hear about her more. And all of them are told in different point of views. The first book is, like, it's from the biologist, and then it's an outside perspective, and then Acceptance, which is the third book, is just, I forgot what it's called. I think it's third point of view, where it's like, you are this person, blah, blah, blah. It's so interesting, and there's going to be a fourth book, and I pre-ordered it, and I got it for free, and I'm so excited about it, because it's, okay. I'm sorry. This is my apology video, guys. I'm sorry. I just really like these books, and I think they're really brilliant, and I've read Annihilation minimum 5 times, and every time I read it, I'm like, I didn't even notice that part. Like, oh my god. It's just, there's so much to pick up on every single time, and it's brilliant. It's so, like, these books are so good, and I can't wait for the fourth one. Guys, I'm so excited. That's basically it. I have some, like, honorable mentions, which is just, like, books that I don't, like, own that I really like. I think the first one that comes to mind is, The Deep by River Solomon, which is a fantastic, like, mermaid book, but also not, it's mermaids, but it's about like the like deep sea civilization that came from enslaved pregnant women being thrown overboard from ships, and like those babies that they had in the water became this humanoid but like fish civilization. And they it's from the perspective of the person in that society who is going to be like the memory keeper, who keeps all of the like dark traumatic memories of like how the society came to be. And she doesn't want that, she can't handle it, so she goes up to the surface, and then she meets this fisher person, and they like fall in love, and it's beautiful but also like so emotionally rich. And I've only read it once, and it just like really, really stuck with me. I love that book. It's amazing. What's another book I like that I don't own? I would say I was just thinking about this the other day because, like I said, I went to House on the Rock the other day. Like, we drove up to House on the Rock, and there's a big part in American Gods by Neil Gaiman that takes place in the carousel room in House on the Rock, which I got to see for the first time, and it was appropriately magnificent. But it made me think about Anansi, who is in that, who is the spider god in African folklore. And he has a spin-off book called Anansi Boys, which is about his sons, like, meeting after, I think after he dies, even though he's a god. Maybe he does actually die. I was thinking about it because I read it in, I want to say 8th grade, and I was like, this book is amazing, and then I never read it again. So that's like something I need to get, because that was a good book. Yeah. I fear this may be the end. So, oh, also, maybe I can grab it. I feel like I'm gonna knock everything over. I'm gonna try and grab this. We did it. This is Dracula by Bram Stoker, obviously. But I got this when I was in Ireland from the National Literature Museum, and I haven't read it yet. I'm gonna be so real. I started it and then I didn't continue to read it because it's an old book and it's more difficult to read. But I really like the setup of it because it's like a diary. But I just had like such like a connection moment with this because I got it and then I was walking back to the train and I passed by the church that Bram Stoker got married at, and I was just like, whoa, history. So, like, looking at this is like, oh my god, like, I got this from, like, right around the corner from, like, where this guy actually was. And then, you know, I was, like, walking around St. Stephen's Green, which is, like, where all of these incredible Irish authors, like, walked around and, like, thought in between, like, writing and, like, met up with each other and were, like, buddies. And yeah, I'm excited to read this. Maybe I'll read this next, like after I'm done rereading The Virgin Suicides. Also the one I was gonna say that I totally forgot. The Lovely Bones. I love The Lovely Bones. I read that book way too young and then got super emotionally attached to it. I do own it. I don't know where it is. I'm gonna be so real with you. I don't know where that book went. It's in a bag somewhere because I definitely took it camping or when I was like house sitting for my dad. I don't know where it is, but I love that book. It's so sad. It's so beautiful, though. It is, like, another book that is just, like, love. Yeah, and then okay, no one's gonna be interested, but I have 1,000 million books, so if I want to talk more about books, I will do that. But, thank you for coming to my vlog. This was fun. I just really needed something to talk to, so thanks for sticking around. I don't think I'm gonna edit this literally at all because I don't want to. So, thanks!